Hello and welcome to VRTV. My name is Zena. Coming up on the show is Paul Colls, co-founder of Fierce Kaiju, developers of the Gear VR game Viral. Also joining me is Gemma Jessop of Cherry Pop Games, bringing one of the most popular pool games to VR. Before any of that, we'll have the news roundup and I'll also be announcing the GDC merch competition winners. It can easily be said that the past 2 weeks have been monumental in the arrival of consumer VR, as both the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive have launched and are now available. But with every new and exciting thing, there are bound to be hiccups. Neither the Rift or the Vive had a completely successful shipping experience, with orders for the Rift being delayed due to unexpected component shortages, and HTC having pre-order auto cancellations, which is said to be due to the fault of banks. Not to fear, the vast majority of buyers have received their HMDs and these issues are being resolved. While Oculus VR and HTC are celebrating the launches of their HMDs, Microsoft is only at the beginning of its journey, with the HoloLens dev kits being shipped out to developers across the US. News of the $3,000 dev kit shipping to other territories is yet to come, but the package does include software such as Holo Studio and video game Young Conquer from Asobo Studios. And finally, in a VRTV exclusive, we can reveal that the former cinematic director of BioWare, Jonathan Perry, who has worked on titles such as Mass Effect and Dragon Age, has started up his own VR studio, Ractive. No content has been announced yet, but for the latest on this story and all the HMD launches, head over to vrfocus.com. And now for the winners of the GDC merch bundle. Congratulations to you, Jason Davies and Christian Mohai. Make sure we can get in contact with you so we can send those straight over. As for the rest of you guys, stick around to the end of the episode for your chance to get hold of your very own HMD. Coming up is Paul Colls, who came from developing AAA video game titles to co-founding Fierce Kaiju.
My name is Eve. It appears we are in a whole world of trouble. My system mainframe is in immediate danger. Would you be so kind and help a damsel in distress?
I'd like to introduce my first guest to VRTV, Paul Colls of Fierce Kaiju. Welcome to VRTV.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get on to what Fierce Kaiju really is, could you tell us what kind of background you came from in terms of game development and as well as your team?
So I've been sort of primarily involved with AAA productions for the majority of my career, which is nearly 16 years now, working on the likes of Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, Call of Duty and a bunch of other things. And similarly, the Fierce Kaiju team have a similar sort of experience as well. So whilst we come from that sort of AAA background, we've also had a bit of indie development in our past as well. And obviously, we kind of went back to our roots a little bit by setting up Fierce Kaiju.
And of course, you've brought out your first game, which is VR.
Yep.
Viral. Could you tell us a bit about it for those who don't necessarily know?
Yeah, sure. Viral is, it's quite a simple little game at its core, but it's built around like a really sort of tight gameplay loop. And it's a simple concept in that you're in this computer sort of world and these viruses are attacking and you have to look around a virtual space and just fire a single shot and take down these enemies that are all around these multiple stages. It's a score-driven game, so you constantly have to have different score things, so like you can shoot walls and bounce off and get skill shots, headshots, long shots, all that sort of stuff, and really hit those big high scores. We wanted to make it proper arcadey and fun.
And so you've chosen to make your first game VR. Was that much of a risk?
For us, it wasn't a massive risk at the start because it was an opportunity that sort of came our way, which we wanted to take. There were other things that we could have chosen to do, but it felt like a good direction for us. You know, people would suggest that, you know, getting into VR early is quite a risk, and I'd argue that they would probably be right. But you know, there's a lot to gain from starting early in the knowledge base, and sort of getting the contacts and all that sort of stuff became very useful to us early doors. So I wouldn't say it was a risk for us, but I could appreciate why some people would see it that way.
So going from developing games such as Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty, they are PC and console-based games.
Yeah.
How was it adapting to a smaller mobile-based game on an HMD, you know, the Samsung Gear VR?
Well, I think it's sort of, like I said earlier, we'd done a little bit of sort of mobile work in the past anyway. You know, we'd produced a couple of mobile games when we were at Activision. So we had a bit of experience making smaller scale games as well as the AAA stuff we'd done before. So it wasn't a massive leap for us. The biggest lessons were obviously the VR side of things. So learning, relearning how to do things that we'd been accustomed to doing, you know, very well in the past. Those were the more difficult lessons, but at the same time very enjoyable.
What were those things that you had to relearn?
So simple things such as sort of cutscenes, you know, how you might do them. You know, we didn't do them in VR, but sort of thinking about all those sort of the way that you present elements of your game, like the scoring system. Would you have subtitles? Choosing to do a VO instead of subtitles, and do we want subtitles? Things that you take for granted on traditional sort of platforms. You had to sort of rethink a little bit.
Will you adapt Viral to the Rift?
I think at some point we'd definitely like to see Viral on Rift. I'm pretty hopeful that we'll sort of make some noises around that pretty soon. So we'll
But
see.
it's still in development then?
Yeah.
In terms of designing the game, you touched on it. What were some of the parts that you thought you did really well?
I think the core gameplay was we handled really well. You know, that's built from experience. You kind of get a feel for something, you know, when you're building it and you know it's fun to play, and you still have fun going back to it months later. You know that you're building a good title, and we used to feel like that back in the old days. So that was something that was very important to us and always is. And I kind of, you know, without trying to sound big-headed or anything, it's something that we pride ourselves on. So we knew that should come pretty easily for us. So yeah, I'd say the actual core game mechanics, having that arcadey feel, allowing people to just put it on and really understand what's going on very quickly.
So from what you've learned in VR, would you say that you would then try and make more VR games, or are you trying to spread across?
You know, as a studio, we're 100% committed to VR. We're going in with both feet and just making some great content. We've worked on some fantastic prototypes that, you know, may see the light of day at some point. But yeah, it's not to say we won't ever do anything like more traditional, but you know, our heart's pretty much in VR at the moment.
Thank you so much for joining me here on VRTV, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
If you stick here with me, next will be Gemma Jessop from Cherry Pop Games. I'd like to introduce my next guest of VRTV who joins me and Paul, Gemma Jessop from Cherry Pop Games. It's lovely to have you here.
Ah, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
You handle the creative side of Cherry Pop Games, and you guys have recently made a VR version of Pool Nation.
We have, yeah.
Would you be able to tell us about it?
We've just recently joined forces actually with another company called Perilous Orbit, who are ex-HoloLens guys. And we've taken our core physics engine of pool and merged it with their knowledge of AR and VR and created Pool Nation VR.
So how did you adapt your original Pool Nation game to VR?
Well, it was actually quite natural for us to bring Pool Nation into VR. It happened quite quickly, and it all was a bit of a snowball effect. And first of all, obviously we brought the gameplay over and taking a shot and what have you, and managed to try and work out how the controls would work, because obviously you can't physically lean on a table. We actually had a few people nearly fall through the invisible table demoing it at GDC just because they believed the table was there.
Yeah.
So we've got a lock mechanism which we had to introduce. We had to think through obviously working out how that shot take mechanism was going to work. Also redesigning the rooms, because our rooms in Pool Nation are very vast and shiny and pristine, and we sort of ended up more of a bar, sort of a dimly lit, had everything in a sort of intimate space around you so that it was very, very tactile. You can transport around the room obviously, but we found that you wanted that intimacy in the game, so that obviously had to change. So we actually made a whole new location for GDC, which we weren't expecting to do. We're still going to work on the previous ones, but they obviously have to be adapted for that.
So talking more about the physics, how did you incorporate the physics, especially with the HTC Vive motion controllers?
Well, we have our own physics engine, which is what we use for Pool Nation, so the physics came across quite easily. I actually found when we moved it over to VR that it felt more natural playing in VR. It's almost like VR was made for pool, because it just feels right holding a controller and taking a shot, and we've found that so far from the demos that we've done as well.
Could you talk more about the environment and the setting that you made for GDC? So what kinds of settings? And how do you make an environment that's so likeable to just hang out in?
Like I said, it kind of developed over time. We had a first sort of demo room that we used where we just threw in objects like bottles and stools and things that you can pick up and touch and throw and smash. And it sort of built from there. And then we went for like nice brick walls and felt very dimly lit with a few people lurking around in the background, which hopefully you can interact with soon, because that would be fun. When we thought VR, we were like, oh wow, we can have like skee ball and darts, and we all went a bit crazy with all these things that we can add. And then we kind of pared it down and thought, right, let's focus on the core physics of the pool simulator, make sure that's right, make sure they can play a good game, and then worked on the assets around that to make sure it fit in. So that's when we started adding in smashable beer bottles and chairs that you can put on the table and shoot balls around them and create crazy sort of trick shots and stuff.
Fantastic. And Paul, I don't know if you've seen Pool Nation?
Yeah, I saw it on the Xbox One.
Did you enjoy it then?
Yeah, I sort of briefly flirted with it and really enjoyed it. But yeah, really interested in seeing the VR version.
Could you imagine playing it?
Oh, yeah,
Could
yeah,
you...
especially like in a dive bar and sort of swinging things around, and trick shots sound incredible. I mean, that sort of thing could work well socially as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Setting up trick shots and putting them on YouTube and things like that.
I mean, we have the trick shot side of things in Pool Nation as it stands, but when we moved over to VR, that was one of the other things that felt so natural, because you can physically put two objects together, which with a controller was so hard to do because you haven't got that accuracy. To actually stand there and physically put two tubes together is so easy. So yeah, the trick shot objects will be coming over at some point, so you can play all sorts of crazy outlandish trick shots across all the tables in the bar and create absolute mayhem.
Thank you so much, Gemma, for joining us here on VRTV.
No, thank you.
And thank you too, Paul.
Pleasure.
For your chance to win your very own Merge VR HMD, courtesy of Virtual Umbrella, all you gotta do is comment below or tweet me at Xena VR Focus, telling me what your ideal VR hangout would be. Best of luck and catch you next time.